Okay, so this podcast episode is going to come out maybe a day or two before Mercury retrograde ends, and I almost started it without hitting record. Like, I almost just started talking, so thank God, I actually hit record. Anyways, hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to a new episode of the Mini Mira Show. This podcast is all about emotions, and we're going to be talking more about that today. So let's just leave it at emotions. I'm your host, Amira Sookram, and the author of the Guilt-Free Goals book, and I am writing my second book. So transitioning very quickly, today I am talking finally about emotional literacy. Clearly, I am super excited to get started because it's something that I've been alluding to and talking a lot on social media about for maybe a year now. Maybe I started talking about it like a year ago, which is really crazy how time works and how we typically work in a cycle. So we start something and then like 6 months later and 6 months after that, we're like moving through that cycle over and over again. Emotional literacy is the ability or skill that we learn to name our emotions as they happen in the moment. So when a feeling comes up, you are able to sit and be like, this is how I'm feeling, and you acknowledge that feeling. It doesn't mean that you are necessarily processing that emotion or feeling in that moment, but you are able to sit with yourself long enough to acknowledge it before just acting or reacting. And this is not to shame anyone for reactions, triggers, or acting just naturally. This is to just honor that there is actually a skill that we can build to sit with our emotions. And not necessarily do you have to sit with it in that moment, but naming it allows you to acknowledge the emotion or feeling so that you can come back to it when you have the chance or when you have the safety and space to do so. So I'm going to put a feelings wheel, hopefully, let's see how my video skills are, somewhere up here. Yeah, somewhere up there. And this is a feelings wheel that I made based off of feelingswheel.com. So somebody actually created a feelings wheel with a bunch of different emotions and feelings that we can use to name our feelings. This is not a list of all feelings in the world. There are so many more. But it's a list of feelings to help you get in touch with yourself more. So take a moment, pause the video if you need to, and look at this list, and then leave a comment telling me, how are you feeling right now? How are you feeling? And your natural reaction might be to say fine or okay. And I want to get you to pause right there, because if your natural reaction is to say fine and okay, those aren't feelings. It's alluding to the fact that, hey, if somebody asks me how I'm feeling, I might not know how to put into words how I'm feeling or how to communicate and connect with that person on an emotional level. So emotions help us connect with other people. And if we stunt that by saying we're fine and okay, we're not deepening that relationship. In the book that I'm writing, I talk a little bit about how movies and books and words in general help us connect with other people. And if you were watching a movie and every time the main character was asked like how they're feeling, or if they had to like talk or have this emotional conversation with somebody and they shut down and avoided it, that would make for such a different movie than somebody who could actually open up and share their feelings. And sometimes what's left unsaid can be really deeply emotional, as in we connect to it because we relate to it. But oftentimes when we're watching movies that actually are able to go into that depth of emotion, it brings more feelings out of us. I know it can be so easy to reach for just saying okay and fine. And even within myself, when some people ask me how I'm feeling or how I am sometimes, I naturally want to say okay and fine because I maybe don't want to emotionally connect in that moment, or like I'm just on autopilot. And I think it takes some time to rewire the brain to actually be like, hey, this person asking me how I'm feeling is trying to connect with me. And if I want connection in my life, I will have to step up and actually do the work to connect with that person. A lot of people online, and I just got off TikTok live, that's why I'm so energetic, they're telling me that like, hey, I'm fine on my own And my first question is like, are you really fine? Like, are you really fine? There's nothing in your life where you want to connect more with other people. Like, you don't want a relationship, you don't want to date, you don't want those things, or maybe you are in a relationship and you're dating, you don't want to connect with your partner more. You don't want them to be more attuned to your needs, you don't want them to understand how you feel, or are you just complacent and okay or fine with the idea that you might not ever have that connection. So there's really a big difference here. And honestly, if you're my people, if you're going to be here in this space, if you're going to be watching these podcasts and learning about yourself, we have to get past this emotional hurdle of emotional literacy and taking time to practice it. We have to be willing to connect with ourselves so that we can deepen our connections with other people. We have to be willing to practice vulnerability and intimacy with our own feelings if we're ever going to be empathetic to other people. It's a practice and it's a skill, and it takes a long time to learn it. Most people, if they look at that feelings wheel on a daily basis, if somebody asks them how they're feeling, they wouldn't have that many words to describe their feelings. I think most people have like 6 to 10 words to describe their feelings. There's just such a big range of emotions that we can feel in life that it makes sense to get to know more words to describe these things. And with the more words we learn to describe these things and to feel all of those feelings, we're able to connect with more people because we're honoring where people are at and learning how to be empathetic. So if somebody is feeling bitter or frustrated, we can empathize with them because we've maybe felt that emotion before. We can empathize with people who are feeling angry. We can empathize with people who are exhausted. And going to exhaustion, like, I know that I left out a big part of the feelings wheel, which is emotions of disgust. I actually left that out because I find in today's society, we get exhausted more than we get disgusted by things. So instead of being disgusted by the way this person is treating me, I just get exhausted by it. I'm just like, energetically, this is not for me. And we have the ability now to remove ourselves from situations that are typically disgusting, but now it's just exhausting. So that's why I did that. But disgust is definitely a real emotion, and there's a lot of different emotions that weren't included in this wheel. So the life pondering question that I'll end this episode on is really, really actually life pondering. How are you feeling? Can you get to this question every single day or every single weekday? Can you take a moment to check in with yourself? If you are looking at my content daily or like on TikTok or Instagram daily, go to my page every day, open up that feelings wheel, and take a moment to answer that question for yourself. Over time, you will start to see how the relationship with yourself is changing and growing, and maybe how that frustration, that bitterness, that calm, that joy, that sadness, that depression, how that links to certain behaviors in your life. And then you'll start to see patterns. Okay, so I'm feeling frustrated all the time when I'm at work. What about work is frustrating me? I'm feeling so bitter about my partner and the way they're treating me. Why am I feeling bitter? So the first step, naming your emotions. And then you get into feeling them. But for right now, you don't have to get into that. Just start with that first step. The first step of emotional literacy, and in general, feeling better, is naming your emotions. So I don't want to leave you with nothing. I know it's a lot to open up this book of like, hey, these are feelings. What do I do with them? So I actually read a few books about this, and that's what kind of drove me to like speak more on this. Or actually, it was kind of the opposite. I was feeling pulled towards it, and I kept opening up books that talked about these things. And that's where I got the idea of emotional literacy and that this makes sense to help people with. So the first book is Feeling Better. I believe it's by Cindy Goodman. I'll link all of these books in the caption of this podcast episode. So Feeling Better. The other one is Running on Empty, Jonice Webb, I believe. Running on Empty, Feeling Better. So the first one is about depression and how to feel better. The second one is about childhood emotional neglect and how that impacts the way we experience the world and our emotions. And then Nonviolent Communication. I will link this one. And Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown. These are all books that talk about emotions and the importance of naming your emotions. Thank you so much for being here. Please support the podcast in any way that you can. Like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you are listening and not watching. But thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful, and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye.